Magical Mystery School, and thank you so much for coming back for July 11th. We're going to talk about Retrograde Alley. Here we come, because we've got Pluto's already retrograde, and we're going to talk about Saturn and Neptune and Uranus and Mercury and just a bunch. So anyway, what happens when we go down an alley? We got to look at the garbage and the loading docks, and it's kind of smelly, and sometimes they're dead ends. We got to slow down, but we always end up coming back to our primary path. So keep that in mind for these retrogrades. And if you want some more just how the mechanics, because the planets don't actually stop and go backwards. In my playlist, Astrology for Beginners, lesson 27, I go over the mechanics for Mercury retrograde, but it's the same for all the planets, about how when the planets are going together around the wheel, and then when one turns the loop, it looks like it's going backwards, but it's not, because they're on the other sides of the circle. Anyway, I explain that much more clearly in those lessons. Okay, but first, before we go forward with our retrogrades, let's look at hindsight, which is 2020. I couldn't remember hindsight last time, but sad to say we had a very, we had Neptune go retrograde on the 4th, and that's when we had that horrible water event, that flooding in Texas. There was also flooding in North Carolina, as well as New Mexico, but they, of course, wasn't quite as bad, of course, and that was just really, really sad. Now, you may say that to somebody, and they may say, oh, that's just a coincidence, and, with stuff like that, I don't ever argue with anybody. I mean, Neptune's stations stopping, retrograde, and I was in a town, and we had a flash flood, and that's literally what happened. A rainstorm just sat on part of the town for literally hours and just dumped water. But anyway, and you know what I always say to somebody if they don't believe in astrology or they don't like it or whatever? I just say, well, get your chart done and see what you think. Because I tell you, once somebody gets their chart done, they believe. I'll never forget getting my first chart done and the gal telling me, you had some sort of accident when you were around 11, and I broke my arm when I was 11. Okay, I became a believer. All right, now let's just look at the big picture, what we've got going forward here with all these retrogrades, because remember that's, we've got to rethink things, redo things, reevaluate things under a retrograde. So we've got Pluto up here in Aquarius, about 3 degrees or so, and it's retrograde right now on it went May 4th, and it already did its wobble between Capricorn and Aquarius, so it's not going to do that again, but it will go direct in October of 2025. Now, Neptune went retrograde on July 4th, and will go direct in December of this year. And remember, it's going to go back over that 0 Aries point, that primordial degree, so it's going to go back into Pisces, so it's still wobbly. And Saturn is going to go retrograde on July 12th and will go direct in November of this year. And the same thing, it's going to go back into Pisces. Then on July 17th, that's when we have Mercury going retrograde. Now it's going retrograde at 15 degrees of Leo. So that's pretty much right smack in the center. And just to let you know, it's come in and it went up to 15 degrees, and then on its retrograde, it's going to go back all the way to 4 degrees Leo. And then on August 11th, it's going to go and turn direct again, and off it goes. Now remember, there's this thing called the shadow. So when Mercury was coming along, and it was about July 1st actually, it went over 4 degrees Leo. So that was when Mercury entered its shadow. And then it's going to go all the way up to the 15th, and then it's going to turn our station retrograde, that's what it's doing on the 17th. And it's going to go retrograde, and then when it gets back to the 4th is when it's going to station direct. So that's going to be, and until it gets past that 15 degree, it'll be considered to be in its shadow. Now, you guys who've been listening to me for a while, you know that I think you need to know your sensitivity to Mercury retrograde, because for me, it really starts like maybe a week before Mercury retrograde. I wouldn't buy a car at that time or when Mercury's retrograde, because I've done it and it was a total disaster. But but for me, once Mercury starts going direct and once it starts speeding up, it's going for me. So it doesn't, my shadow doesn't last that long. So see, are you the kind of person that Mercury goes retrograde, you don't even notice it, you don't even feel it? Some people, their car's going to break, their computer's going to mess up on them, the electricity's going to go weird, they're going to be misunderstood and misunderstand other people. So just keep that in mind with that Mercury retrograde. Okay, and for those of you who are beyond just our, we just do the primary planets, or I'm doing the primary planets and the primary aspects in these videos. But for those of you who are going beyond, ARIES, who's a new, what do they call it, a planetoid, a plantlet? Anyway, on July 22nd, it's going to go retrograde. Now it has I think it's a 560-year orbit, so it's pretty slow. And then on July 30th, Chiron is going to go retrograde. So lots of big things going on there. Now, let's just look at the big picture here, or continue with the big picture. I also wanted to mention, just to keep everybody's mind in it, that Jupiter has gone into Cancer, went in June 10th. So it's kind of floating around down here. And then Mars is also up here in Virgo, okay? So it's floating up in that area of the world. Now, and I should have also mentioned that Jupiter will not wobble. It will go retrograde, but it's going to go retrograde in Cancer in a bit here, after a bit. Anyway, okay, so our wobbling signs are the ones that are going retrograde and also changing signs. Now on July 7th, like we said, Uranus is going to go into Gemini, and it is going to go back into Taurus. But the big thing about Uranus going into Gemini, this is mutable air. So this is, we are going to be learning all sorts of new things about technology, and it could even be some telekinesis, mind traveling or communication between people. And also the idea of the AI is big with this, because remember, Uranus is the ruler of Aquarius. So now that Uranus has gone into Gemini, which is a very much of a communication sign, right? It's also bringing in this Uranian energy. And remember, it's trine Pluto up here. So, but I don't think we have anything to worry about with AI, because we've got one congresswoman that I think is going to be on it. She is already passing legislation so that nobody can manipulate the weather. That's that gal Marge from Georgia, and she's convinced that the Democrats created that flood in Texas. So I'm sure she's going to be all over protecting us from AI. So I'm not worried about that at all. Okay. Then on July 13th, that's when, Uranus goes retrograde, is also the time when Uranus and Neptune are going to be at their closest conjunction this time around. They're going to be what's called partile. They'll be at the same degree, but not the same degree in minute. That's called a perfected transit. And that'll happen in February of 2026. But still, they're only 13 minutes apart. My gosh, that's like nothing, right? I mean, that's so small. It's hard to even imagine, what is that, a quarter of a degree? That's tiny. Okay, so, and one other thing I wanted to just put in your all's mind, so that you can just kind of keep thinking about it. Is it in the U.S. Sibley chart that I think I spoke about last time, on the nadir of that chart is 2 degrees Leo. That's also called the IC, opposite the midheaven, right, or the MC up here. So just kind of keep that in mind, that 2 degrees Leo is, that's going to be trying all this, or this is going to be trying that, and we'll, getting opposition here from Pluto, because it's the nadir is in Leo there. So just kind of keep that in the thoughts in your mind anyway. Okay, now let's go a little bit more detail here with Neptune and Saturn. Now Neptune obviously is our flash floods, water. It also rules things like drugs and oil, gas and oil, otherworldly things like psychic stuff, and it can also be, you know, as a 12th house thing, which Neptune rules. It could be places where we want to get people away from society, so it's like jails and hospitals, and it's where we keep secrets. Now with Saturn here, this is, you know, structures, building things, the 3D worlds, and accountability with a capital A. So that's why I'm thinking with these two together, maybe some of those secrets will be coming out. And this is the time, and again, let me just show you this one more time. I think I showed you all this last time. This is the tarot keys for, this is for Neptune, and this is for Saturn. Is that in focus? Yeah, not too bad there. And you can see that this is key 21. And this is key 12, so they're just opposites in numbers there. This is the last major arcana, and this is about in the middle point. And when we turn these around, you can see the similarities even more so. That's what it's kind of like Saturn's reality and Neptune is illusion. But look at this, you can see this so clearly, if I can get it to stay in focus. Okay, I'm going to just keep talking and play with the focus so that this... Come on, baby. There we go. Okay, so you can see that there's a triangle made here on top of a cross, and here's a triangle here on top of a cross, and that's the alchemical symbol for sulfur. So there again, you can see there's a relationship between these two planets, even though they seem like they're diametrically opposite of one another. Okay. Now this time in July and even into August that these two planets are going to be so close together, I just really want you guys to really think about manifesting for the future. And not tomorrow or next month. I'm talking about next year, 5 years, 10 years. And what I want you to do for your manifestation, thinking about this big future for yourself, because see, this is the seed point where for the next, I think it's 36 years that these two take and for their conjunction. Saturn will speed up and it'll eventually square Neptune, oppose, square, you know, and come back to conjunct. What's happening right now is going to sort of program, be that seed point for all the other aspects that come out of this cycle with this Saturn-Neptune. So really, some are saying this is like a set point for a whole new generation here. Dare I say even the age of Aquarius? Okay, now there's an astrologer I respect immensely who says, the age of Aquarius is not going to start for 140 years. Okay, well, we're working up to it. We're getting there. Okay. So anyway, and what I'm saying about is really clarify all your inner thinking, your internal conflicts and all that kind of stuff, because this is really the time where you want to change. Like, say you have something happens, you're like, oh God, that's just my fault. Or, oh, what did I do to cause that? That's the kind of stuff you've got to start cleaning up, because you can't just keep being down on yourself. You got to just say, oh, stuff happens. Oh, oops, I made a boo-boo, or something like that. You need to start clarifying this physical and spiritual, and getting your thoughts straight on that. And what I kind of mean by that is keep your vibration really high. And how do you do that? Well, one of the things is let your Abraham from Esther Hicks calls it emotional guidance system. If you feel bad about something, if you're feeling conflict or upset, then you should stop and think about that. Why are you upset? You know, if someone is hurting you all the time, well, maybe it's time for you to stop and clarify and think about, what do you want to do about that? How do you want to make that different? That sort of thing. So, and when you're working with your guides, ask them for guidance. Like, instead of saying, you know, give me the solution, say, guide me to find the right person for my life. Guide me to the right place so I can meet the right person. You know, teach me how to make room in my life for a new person. You know, ask questions, ask guidance. That's another thing Esther Hicks or Abraham says is, look at things in your life, instead of looking for solutions to problems, look for answers to questions. And I think that changed my thinking on so many levels. It was really, really, really pretty cool. And the other thing, when you're doing this cleansing process, just remember the universe is in a whole different time scale than we are. I mean, like, we may say, oh, I need this as soon as possible, you know, and the universe says, oh, great, no problem. 10 years, 20 years, does that sound okay? You know. Okay. Okay, now back to Saturn and Neptune here. Now, this one is also considered to relate to Russia quite a bit. I mean, Stalin died, Putin was born with Saturn-Neptune conjunction. The Berlin Wall came down in 1989, and we also, I think we're going to see some big changes in Russia, and I think it might even be geographical. We'll see. In other words, maybe more parts of Russia start to peel off, like when the Soviet Union fell. And the Berlin Wall. Let's see. This was when, in the past, the Exxon Valdez, we had that issue, water, oil, environment, under this Neptune-Saturn conjunction. And of course, we also had, that was when the Supreme Court installed Bush as president, which I think kind of put us on this road to where we're at right now. And a happy thing, Taylor Swift was born the last time Neptune and Saturn conjunct. Okay, now another point I want to make about this conjunction is that it's exactly at the midpoint between this Saturn-Pluto trine. So it's really giving this trine a little bit of punch here. Now, so let's talk about that. Uranus is, you know, it's our planet of expect the unexpected, and it's called the Great Awakener, new thought, new technology, embracing change. Because just remember, with Uranus, you want to make the changes because the changes are going to happen. So you want to make the changes that you want, not just what's happening. So let's see, and this is the key for Uranus. Let's see if I can get it focused for you guys. And it's the good old Fool card. And here we can see, and that is Uranus, right? Just getting ready to walk off the cliff. Why is it not focusing? Okay, I give up. There we go. See, as soon as you say you give up, it happens. All right, so here we've got, you know, this fella's just getting ready to walk off this cliff, but he does have his little white flower of intellectual passion. He's got the rod of enlightenment, bringing down those solar rays into his crown chakra, out his throat chakra, into his hands to get something done, Saturn. But he doesn't know where he's going. He has total faith and trust. He's got his little purse there. Okay. So that's the key for Uranus. And why I show you these is that if you are having a Uranian problem, or you want to focus on that kind of energy or whatever, meditate on this. And I'm not talking about, you know, an hour every day. I'm talking about 5 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes at night, that kind of thing. And let this key become part of your consciousness. Okay, so, and this is all also, you know, Uranus is also technology too. And being in, I think I already went over this, being in Gemini, the communication sign, you know, ruled by Mercury, and these two are octaves of one another. So we've really got a lot of understanding going on here. Oh, and I thought it was interesting. They were saying that there was problems with notification about that flood in Texas. But I tell you what, like I said, I wasn't in the critical zone. But when we had our flash flood, it happened, it was like between like 11 o'clock at night and like 1 or 2 in the morning, that time frame. Like this friend of mine got off work at like 11 or something like that, and he went out and his car was floating down the street. So, and it was also, it had to be this like old Mustang that he'd like put years of work into. Anyway, okay. So, but my experience talking to people who are in the critical area, oh my gosh, you know, the cops and the sheriffs and everybody was pounding on their door. Okay, so last but not least here, oh, and one more thing, the seed point for this trine, like I was talking about here, was like 1964-65 when Uranus and Pluto conjuncted. And what was that? That was, you know, make love, not war, flower power. I mean, I was a kid, but I remember it clearly. And anyway, so hopefully that kind of energy will become more and more powerful. All right. Now let's see. Now Mercury down here, like I said, I think I went over the whole shadow bit and everything, but with Mercury and Leo, that's a very, very proud sign. It's the royalty. So they can get their feelings hurt. So watch out for just blurting things out, and watch out for people blurting things out at you. Be forgiving, I guess, with Mercury retrograde in Leo. And I'm really seeing this time as we're going to be processing a lot of this information. Because the key for, let's see if I can do it without the board. The key for Mercury, see if I can get that ring light out of there, is the Magician. And you'll see in some, wow, there. You can see in some decks, it's this key is also called the Alchemist. So you can see he's got all his tools there, as above, so below. He's ready to go to work. But anyway, okay, so like I said, I think we're going to be processing a lot of this information because we've got a really nice little thing happening just a few hours after Mercury goes retrograde. Venus is going to come along in Gemini and sextile Mercury. Remember, she conjuncted Uranus just before he went in? Well, now she's sextiling Mercury. And what I'm interpreting this is that we're going to have, you know how with retrogrades always kind of like boo-boos, mistakes, misinformation, this. With Venus sextiling this, I'm thinking, you know, air to fire, I'm thinking this is going to be good mistakes. It's going to be the kind of thing where, you know, something happens and you can't go out with your friends that night, and so you're stuck at home and the telephone rings and it's someone you've been waiting for to call. And, you know, so it's kind of like good mistakes as I'm hoping for. Now, Mercury never makes it below 4 degrees. So remember, all these guys are all like 3 degrees and below. So it's not activating. It's not, you know, fire to fire. It's not trying these. Fire to air. It's not sextiling this guy. Leo to Aquarius, fire, air, opposition. It's not opposing that. So that's not happening. That's giving us a chance to process all this information. Okay, so I think we've got, you know, just remember July and August, keep clearing, keep building up your vibration, whatever you can do, whatever that is. I don't care if it's swimming, if it's meditating, if it's breathing, whatever it is, gardening, digging in the earth, lift your vibration, sing, dance, whatever it is. And so next week, we'll talk about the sun goes into Leo and there's a new moon in Leo. So we'll talk about all that next week. So bye, everybody, and thanks again for coming. Bye.